Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to this Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform workshop on preserving and restoring ecosystems and biodiversity. My name is Astrid Severin, and I'm a thematic expert for environment and resource efficiency at the Interreg Europe Policy Learning Platform. Together with my colleague Magda Michalikova, who is also a thematic expert for environment and resource efficiency, we will be moderating this workshop here today. I would also like to welcome our trusty colleagues from the communication team, Eugénie Supplisson and Soroush Brandenburg. So before we are really starting, just some housekeeping rules. We are recording this webinar, and the recordings will be later available online along with all the presentations, so that you know already now. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking, but leave your cameras on so we can have a nice discussion. We can see you. That's always great. For questions, please write in the chat, and we will look forward to your questions. There's a lot of experts here, and we hope we can have good discussions around the subjects of today. And we will also post lots of useful information and links in the chat. At the end of this workshop, we have a so-called help desk session. And I would really kindly ask those that have registered for this help desk session not to leave after the webinar is officially ending. But to stay with us. You will be allocated into a room with a colleague that can then speak to you. So please don't run away. That would be really great. And finally, we are really looking forward to your feedback in the survey that we will show to you after the workshop is ended, and we would be happy you could just fill this in a little bit. So our workshop today on preserving and restoring ecosystems and biodiversity has a really rich agenda. So I'm really happy to be able to present two knowledgeable keynote speakers. So we can count on Nigel Dudley from the Institute for European Environmental Policy, and on Vujadin Kovacevic from the European Commission, DG Environment, who is with us despite all the heavy work that's going on at the moment on these subjects. And in our first panel, we have Julien, Jeanne and Alexandra Maccario from Cagne sur Mer and Nice Côte d'Azur. So very nice having you both. Hello and welcome. We also have Laura Todoran and from the Environmental Protection Agency of Mureș, and Cristian Ramos Pap, I hope, from the WWF Romania. And also Balázs Kiss from the Tolna County Development Agency. Hello to you too. And I'm particularly happy that we have been joined also by Evelyn Underwood, also from the Institute for European Environmental Policy, who will be helping us as a discussant in that first panel session. The second panel session is focusing on ecosystem services and particularly on bats and pollinators. And we have Federica Roscioni with us from the University of Studies of Molise. Hello, Federica, I can see you, but I hope you're there.
Hello, I'm here.
Very good to see you. Then we have Saorla, Kavanagh from the National Biodiversity Data Center from Ireland. Hello. And Albert Ruiter from the province of Friesland. Hello, Albert, and thanks for being with us despite the difficult circumstances. So this is our agenda. Before we are going further, just some words on the Policy Learning Platform. We are in the Policy Learning Week. I hope you have all realized that every day we will have different events on different subjects. Today we have the Environment and Resource Efficiency Day. And this policy learning platform is really dedicated to regional policymakers. We want to give them a space where they can learn and they can find inspiration so that at the end they can deliver better policies for the citizens and the regions in which they're living. So we take stock from all the knowledge that is generated in the different Interreg Europe projects. And then we enable collaboration and networking, and we're sharing knowledge with everybody involved. So we are doing this through 4 main services, this policy learning. We have a knowledge hub where we are presenting different policy briefs, articles, and stories, which we are recommending to you to read. We also have a good practice database with lots of inspiring examples, which you can search for what you're looking for, and a community that is joining us in the different thematic workshops and the webinars and also online discussions. And finally, we have some individual expert policy support services, which are help desks, matchmakings, and peer reviews. And just a very brief slide on that. These individual services are of different lengths. So a help desk, we will just give you a written answer. In a matchmaking, we will organize like a 1.5 to 2 hour event with peers that can address a specific policy challenge that you're having. And finally, we have peer reviews. These are 2-day meetings where you can go in depth on an issue that you're having. For example, we will be organizing a peer review in Rasinari in Romania, dealing also with the issues of nature restoration and the collaboration, for example, with landowners, forest owners, and how this can work in terms of governance in the near future. So this is what we can offer. What I want to outline is that we are at the moment preparing a new policy brief on preserving and restoring biodiversity. We already had 2 policy briefs which you can tap into. One has focused on governance for biodiversity and another one on rivers and wetlands. But for this new one, we're really happy that we have a contribution on invasive alien species from Leonardo Mazza from the European Commission. As always, we're presenting a policy context and many good practices, this time in the area of ecosystems restoration, pollinators, invasive alien species, light pollution, and so on. And we are also presenting what sort of EU financial support is available for restoring and preserving biodiversity, and we provide different recommendations. Many of you know the next course or the first course of Interreg Europe are coming, and I don't want to dwell on this. On the 5th of April is a big opening event for which you can, of course, still register. And there are also different information days going on in the countries where you can also listen how you can apply and potentially come up with a project in the area of biodiversity and ecosystems, hopefully, because that's one of the most important areas in my view. So we have good experts here today. They will tell you all about their experience on biodiversity and ecosystems. Just to repeat and to put it in the room again, there are some key commitments by 2030. For example, the legal protection of a minimum of 30% of each the EU's land area and also the EU sea area. The provision of ecological corridors as part of a trans-European nature network. Of course, the commitment to restore degraded ecosystems at land and sea across the EU through the different measures. And there is a lot of funding being made available, unlocked for biodiversity. And the EU wants to lead the way again also for this global biodiversity crisis. So this is a little introduction, so you know what we are talking about. One thing for our speakers, which is very interesting, is to see who is here with us in the room today. So we have prepared 2 little polls, which I would ask my colleague now to start. In our first poll, we would like to understand what is your background. So if you can please choose if you're a regional local authority, a natural park or an NGO, a landowner, forest owner, if you're coming from academia or a European institution or European organization, or from another organization. And you're also very welcome to put in the chat where you're coming from and to say hello to everybody. You can vote now. Oh, we have a lot of other organizations and a lot of regional and local authorities. Very good. Well, thanks for joining us, and we hope that we have answers for you. If you're coming from another organization, it would be very interesting to understand that. So please put in the chat where you're coming from, who you're representing. And our second poll is looking into your motivation of attending this workshop today. So please let us know if you're here because you want, and this is multiple choice. So of course you could choose everything. If you're here because you want to learn more about restoring ecosystems or increasing biodiversity, enhancing pollinator schemes, for example, or you just simply want to learn more about the policy learning platform or find partners for future projects, maybe. You can also vote on that. Thank you. Wow, so everything very strongly represented, restoring ecosystems, increasing biodiversity, and also a strong interest in the policy learning platform and of course future projects. So thank you very much for this little poll and for letting us know. And with this, I would now like to introduce our two keynote speakers again. So we have Nigel and Vujadin. And Nigel, I would like to give the floor to you first. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you see my screen?
Yes, everything's said. You can
Great.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm speaking to you today from Wales in the UK, just the very edge of the Snowdonia National Park. And I'm going to talk about biodiversity footprints in policy and decision making and what role they will have, already have, will have in the European Union. So as you know, biodiversity considerations have been increasingly the focus of EU policy. There's an EU biodiversity policy to 2030. Astrid mentioned that includes a large increase in protected and conserved areas, but it also looks more generally at how we're impacting biodiversity and how we can reduce damaging impacts. And the biodiversity footprint is a concept that is gaining ground in terms of a way that we can both measure and report on this broader impact. The Institute for European Environmental Policy just completed a report. I worked with my colleague Julien Domingo, who I think is on the call, and looking at the current uses of biodiversity footprint, what we need, and what opportunities there are within the EU. In the process of that review, we looked at over 40 different tools and approaches. So already a lot of stuff out there that we can draw on, but also tried to provide some kind of overview analysis of what that means and how it can be used. So we started by defining what a biodiversity footprint was in this particular context. And we suggest the definition could be the impact of a commodity, company, person, or community on global biodiversity, measured in terms of biodiversity change as a result of production and consumption of particular goods and services. And we considered that in relation to species, to ecosystems, and to ecosystem services, because all are important to the European Union. And biodiversity footprint is one of, it's already a fairly crowded field. There's lots of work on footprinting. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide, there's a transport footprint, energy footprint, agriculture footprint, materials, plastics, acid deposition, and so on. And many of these impact on biodiversity. So it's already a fairly crowded and complicated field to understand. Why do we need them? We identified a range of different needs within the European Union. Obviously, it's informing and monitoring biodiversity targets and policies. That's maybe the starting point for many people within the policy sphere. It's also trying to mainstream biodiversity into policy areas with potential biodiversity impacts, helping people who are working in those areas to understand their actual and their potential impacts. Land use sectors, trade policies, development cooperation policies, financial and private sector policies, all of them, everyone, all of us have impacts, and this can help us understand that. And then I've got a line across my screen. I don't know where that came from, but don't worry. Then mainstreaming biodiversity into policy areas with potential biodiversity impacts, a way of bringing that into policy as well. Reporting on the global sustainability agenda. That's actually where we started from with the work with the Commission, addressing global biodiversity impacts, looking at product certification schemes like the Forest Stewardship Council or the many other schemes. They all need to know their biodiversity impact. And it's also a very good way of raising awareness within the general population. A footprint sounds fairly easy. People understand what it means. Excuse me. So we looked at local and regional level, direct impacts. The impacts can be within a single operation. It can be a city looking at their impacts. Could be, could be the link between local activities and global activities. That's often very difficult for people working on a local scale to understand. Could be the impact of specific policies or just raising awareness. And in order to do that, the footprint needs to cover a fairly wide range of different issues. Obviously, we need to know the direct impacts of what we're doing ourselves. A mining company needs to know what kind of impact it is having on the environment immediately around it, whether it's digging somewhere, whether it's having an impact, but also more subtly and probably more importantly for many people, the impacts of the food products we buy, the material products we buy, what the impacts of the production of those, the transport of those, of the marketing of those. And then sometimes even downstream impacts. If I'm a manufacturer, what do my products do? What do the waste products do? What's the impact when it's thrown away or when it's broken or when it's being used? This is a huge research job for an individual city, an individual company, an individual country to try and work those out is a massive research job. But if we know the biodiversity footprints of the different components, then it's a comparatively easy job to pull that information together. One of the things we did was build up a typology of biodiversity footprints, and we looked at three key dimensions: the driver of the pressure, whether it's consumption-based, trade-based, or production-based, the type of footprint we're looking at, ecological footprint, biodiversity, ecosystem service, they're all slightly different, and the method of analysis, the purpose, the reason it's being done, the scale, and the approach. And a lot more details about that in our report. And we found there are a range of broad biodiversity footprints types. There's foundational biodiversity data and tools, pulling together information about biodiversity status to identify risks and opportunities, linking that to impacts. And then there's a whole range of different tools that provide this kind of information. There's very generalized footprint frameworks. There's detailed methodologies looking at a particular sector like food or like a single product. There's some self-assessment tools. You can work with stakeholders and rights holders within a community to work out their own footprint, and tools which give a general framework and then let the user work out the details themselves. And so our assessment looked at the drivers, the types of footprint, and the methods of analysis, which are mainly life cycle analysis, some top-down approaches, a much smaller number of bottom-up approaches, very wide range of scales. Some, as I say, looking at an individual company all the way up to a whole nation or indeed the whole European Union. And the purpose and scale, was matched to those different needs. There's loads and loads of different examples. I'm not going to go through all 40. I'm not even going to go through half of them, but just a little bit of an example. Ecological footprint of Slovenia was worked out by the government in Slovenia. It looked at the whole country. So you can pretty much bet that it was going to be a fairly simple analysis. But what it did do was allow the Slovenian government to identify the sectors where the largest footprint was where they were having the largest footprint. They found it was housing and personal transportation. And that allowed the government to set policy recommendations based on that. So they could identify the key issues and work on those. Then the other example I've just got on the slide there, the TRACE system, which is a European-wide system tool, looking at the impacts of commodity imports on deforestation. So looking specifically at one impact on forests globally, which is a priority for the European Union, following agricultural commodity trades in particular to identify what particular commodities are having on forests around the world. I mean, again, it's very difficult for an individual company to understand if they're manufacturing food, to understand where all the products came from, where the food, maybe the feed products, the livestock came from, whether they were impacting on tropical forests, whether they were plowing up important prairies, what impacts. And this tool, again, provides data to help do that. Finally, we looked at data availability and infrastructure for footprints and what the European Union still needed to do. One of the challenges is that we're still drawing on very generalized data sets. In many cases, we find that footprints are using the red list of endangered species, but that is generally at national level. So it doesn't tell you much about the site-based impact. We often have very minor impacts, but very little information on levels of pollution impact, and then for many pollutants, at what level it starts impacting on a particular species. So there's a lot of information we still need to collect together, although we already have enough information to make a start, as the examples that I showed you. Even though I'm sure Slovenia was drawing on sketchy data, they still had enough to make a quantitative analysis and to make policy recommendations at the end. So filling these gaps we've been talking with the EU about, that is going to be very important. There's areas where the European Union could directly support that, particularly in terms of data gathering in many tropical countries where there's most biodiversity and where we often those least. So please have a look at the report and come back to us if you have any particular problems or questions. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Astrid.
Thank you very much, Nigel, for presenting this interesting report. I think all the regions and also municipalities, they have to start somewhere and to address the issue. So my question to you would be, you've just said there is, for example, some self-assessment tools. There could be some work with stakeholders and citizens on the ground, for example. Would that be a good starting point in your view?
Well, I think that's a great starting point. I love going out and talking to people. And one of the things we've done, and it only touches on some European Union countries, but we did a study of all the national parks in the Balkans, in former Yugoslavia and Albania, and did workshops through WWF in the region. We did workshops talking to people about what impacts they had from the park and also what benefits they gained from the park. And that, even though some of that information was qualitative, it meant that the people who took part in that have a much greater understanding of the impact of that particular park in that case. So I'm very enthusiastic about bottom-up approaches because I think it brings people into the picture. But I think in this case we probably need both top-down and bottom-up approaches, in that we need the kind of country-level studies, which are big data crunching, complicated studies. You probably do need specialists and experts to do. But I'm also very keen on going out at a very local level and talking to people and understanding and getting their understanding as well, because I think that's where you really build change into individuals if they feel part of the process.
Yeah, I think individuals are very important to drive that change. Before I'm asking another question, I would ask everybody, including our speakers, if you have any questions for Nigel, please don't be shy. So Nigel, my other question would be, do everybody has to now go out and first amass and get a lot of data assembled before they can do the next steps, or do you think it would be good if, like Slovenia, they're starting somewhere, and then maybe at a later point they're collecting more data and take more monitoring into account? What would you recommend? Because we are not having a lot of time, if I understand it well.
Look, I'm a scientist, and scientists always want more data, and we're going to ask for more data forever. And I outlined at the end that we do have big data gaps, particularly in the tropics where we don't understand, but we also have a lot of data already, and there's enough to start. So I'd say absolutely start. But I do think, if we're talking at a European Union level, there are things that the EU could do in terms of its own policies, particularly its support policies. The EU has put a lot of effort into collecting data within Europe on biodiversity. We've got very good data compared to the rest of the world. I would suggest that now probably we need some extra, some countries that are really on the development frontier where changes are taking place very fast and they don't know enough. The EU could help in data gathering there, but there's absolutely enough already to make a start.
Thank you very much. I think that's important to know. I mean, you can make a start. There's enough information to make a start. And then if you have to go into more depth, you can focus on specific areas. Very good. I think we're getting some questions in already. We have a question from Pelervo Kokkonen, and excuse me if I'm not pronouncing that well. He's asking, do you have examples of ecosystem services footprints evaluation? Maybe just a short answer, Nigel?
Yes, very shortly, yes. There's a growing number for particularly carbon, where lots of interest in carbon, and also water services. But it's generally an area where we need a lot more information. We don't even really have indicators for environmental service, for ecosystem services. And that was very clear in the Aichi targets, in the last CBD targets, that ecosystem services were not well reported because we don't have ways of measuring them. So yes, we've got some, but we need a lot more.
Thank you very much. And I just finish off with one question from Sabine Stölp. She's asking, do you think it also matters in how far humans perceive themselves as part of the biosphere? What can we do about this? I don't know if you have a specific answer for this, but maybe you can try, Nigel.
Sure, it's a bigger philosophical question. Yes, we do. I mean, particularly in Europe, we have no, or virtually no, ecosystems that haven't been heavily influenced by humans, and we're part of that. And we need to recognize that and see ourselves as part of it. I also think we're not the only part. So, it's important for me not to see everything through an entirely human lens. There's an ethical element here of looking at the rest of the other species, but yes, of course, we're a big part of it. And I think part of biodiversity footprinting is recognizing and measuring our impacts. And a footprint could be positive or negative. We're talking about negative on the whole, but we have a chance, particularly in the UN Decade of Restoration, to rebuild better. So we can go both ways.
Thank you very much, Nigel, for presenting this report to us. I can warmly recommend it. Read it, you get good inspiration, and maybe find a good entry into your new policies for biodiversity and ecosystems with this report. So thank you very much for your contribution. And you have seen already, Vujadin, there's some proposals what the European Commission could do. Maybe I can, while Vujadin is reconnecting, just say that we also have our colleagues here from the Interreg Europe communication team, and they're also answering questions, for example, in the chat. In the meantime, should you have questions for how to participate in the call, how to find partners, so it's also very easy to see here in the chat. So I think the first question has already been answered. Yeah, well, this is a little bit complicated that we have now lost Vujadin exactly at this point. But maybe we can directly go to the, maybe we can go directly to the first panel and then listen to Vujadin after the first panel. I think that might be a good solution. Our first panel is focusing on the restoration and preservation of ecosystems. It will be moderated by my colleague Magda Michalikova and supported by a very knowledgeable discussant, which I'm pleased to welcome here. That's Evelyn Underwood. So it's a real pleasure to have you with us as well. You're a colleague of Nigel's, and a very warm welcome to you as well, Evelyn. So let's try this. Magda, the word is yours, and we are talking first about ecosystems, and then we see how we can get Vujadin back.
Thank you, Astrid. First of all, a warm welcome to our speakers in this first panel session. We are very happy to have you here with us today. Hopefully all of you, I know some of you had some technical difficulties, so we will see how it goes. And to the audience, I just want to remind that make sure to use this opportunity to talk to these great experts, and don't forget to ask questions in the chat during the presentations, and we can have a good discussion after the session. And now, without further ado, let's start with our first presentation by Julien, Jeanne, and Alexandra Maccario on restoration of the river Cagne.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead, floor is
Hello,
yours.
everybody.
Hello.
Do you see our screen?
Yes, everything fine.
Okay. So, 25 years ago, the new municipality engaged a fight against illegal pollution, land use, artificialized riverbanks, and illegal constructions in this peri-urban valley, traditionally cultivated and next protected in the planification documents as agriculture and natural area. But here, the river is private. So, using tools of justice, buying pieces of land, creating family gardens, helping farmers left, the process is long, fragmented, and need public finances, faced to the land pressure and private interests. Meanwhile, densification of the city increased the flood risk and loss of biodiversity, according to many studies that has been done along all this ecological corridor, the Cagne. Climate change impact on our Mediterranean territory had a tragical publicity in October 2020 with Alex storm that destroyed the valley nearby the Vesubia and the Roya here. And it was a shock for all the population. So at this time, it was time to act differently on the process towards resilience.
I will introduce the main issues and goals to implement a strategic guideline for the restoration of the banks of the river. The river Cagne flows through city of Cagne, the last 5 kilometers before the Mediterranean Sea. It is a small river basin of 25 kilometers length. Many issues focused downstream in the floodplain called Val de Cagne, on near the city center. Faces flash flood, long and early drought. It needs to adapt to an urban river with hydraulic structure built in the 60s or 70s. For example, a river covered on channeled in the city center. Upstream faces private properties in the floodplain with disturbed activities. We have a hidden river in this part. The goal was to build a roadmap to coordinate and prioritize actions for the restoration of the river and to enhance its attractiveness on ecosystem services. It suggests the goal is to suggest a plan, a global vision for the next 20 years, proposing a scenario in short term and long term too. About the methodology on the steps. First, the goal was to define the scope, the last 5 kilometers. For example, it's the exit of the ravine upstream, gorge, the gorge de la Cagne. Secondly, build an interdisciplinary team and identify stakeholders. Third, inventory fauna and flora before the project, before the guideline, and set up a global diagnostic. And during the study, the engineers suggest different scenarios, ambitious, a natural river, and more realistic, including human activities.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry, can you speed up a little bit?
stronger? Sorry?
If you
Can you
can, please speed up a little bit.
Yes, we speed a little bit. Okay.
Sorry.
So water is life, river is vitality. Save the water and give more space to the river. That is the goal for this land map, to restore biodiversity and natural banks, to slow down the flow of the river, to let it expand in the fields towards less flood risk, and restore agriculture with agroecology is the key. To recover good soil for water infiltration, good food for local production towards slow food, and nature in the city is the other key. To adapt the city to climate change, to reconnect the citizen to the pleasure of walking along the river, creating a green path from the valley to the sea, and to create facilities toward a slow city. So this land map proposed many project that has to be done now, to be many orientation and demolition of the concrete channel in the center of the city as a pilot operation. When it's possible downtown, create green paths along the river, and also define a strategy of action program in the valley to restore agriculture, and to find the finance and the money and the orientation to restore agriculture there, to protect, restore, and value this blue, green, and black major ecological corridor. That is the aim of the city, the metropole, with us.
To conclude, I will focus on some good practices, the mobilization of a large number of different stakeholders. Before the project, Nice Côte d'Azur worked with the water agency and the ecological potential of the River Cagne. At the beginning of the project, there was a request of the Cagne municipality to build a guide map for restoration of the river. Nice Côte d'Azur is qualified in urban planning and river management, and environment too. In this process, the water agency is a key partner to raise the ambition and help us as a technical and financial partner. We have engaged technical and consulting offices composed by various experts in the team project driven by a landscape planning manager. During the project, the city of Cagne has also organized public participation with a professional office because of divergent ways of viewing using the Cagne River. It helps us to build and develop a scenario. Thanks to hearers.
Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. River restoration indeed is it's very important in terms of climate change mitigation and also in terms of biodiversity increase. And I would like to ask our discussant, Evelyn Underwood, if you have any questions, perhaps, to our speakers. Evelyn.
Thank you. This is a very inspiring example. And I think that there are many cities who are trying to do this right now. So I would be really interested if you've been able to quantify any of the benefits that you've seen coming out of this. I know some benefits cannot be quantified, but what assessment you've done?
For the moment, the benefit is on protecting the city and citizen of flood risk, and so it's huge because and we haven't quantified, but it could be, and we can't quantify the well-being of the citizen opening this valley to citizen by the green path. It's like a big park, agriculture park that will be. So with the many studies we had, studies on flora, fauna, hydraulic, we could make an evaluation. But first, we want, after 25 years, we wanted to go on actions because it was we had too long to wait. So it's we had many datas, and we wanted to go on and to work to do projects, and it was very urgent.
Thank you.
May I ask you maybe a question? You have also shown that the river was partly covered.
Yes.
And we have seen in several Interreg Europe projects that the rivers have started to be uncovered again, to be open again. Is that also something that you're working on?
We tried. The water agency asked us to work on it, but it's here in the center of a dense city, so it's very difficult as the new tramway will come, and it's too complicated. But to try it, as we try to also, we study how to demolish all the channel along the all this way, but it's too short. The construction are too close to the channel, and in case of a flood, of a century flood that could happen at any time, it would be a disaster. So we just work on this in the urban part. We worked on more restore some little flow, natural flow in the middle, and this restore the banks, take off the concrete, and put gardens instead of
permeable soils.
Yes, instead of what you can see here, for example,
Very good, excellent. Yeah, I used to think that it might be an excellent Interreg Europe project if cities would work together on uncovering rivers.
Yeah, and here Europe help us, European Feder help us to do this. This project is partner with Region and Europe Feder funds.
Thank you very much. So we have two more questions. Magda, can I read them, or what do you think? So we have one question on, you mentioned the landscape manager.
Yes.
Does she or he have a role as mediator across the different interests as well? And what is the reaction of the stakeholders? If I can ask you for a very brief answer, please.
Yeah, the landscape architect was very important as mediator for between engineer and also during the consultation of the citizen, because it's with landscape touch the emotion, the aesthetic part also, and the whole question of sustainable land planning with economy, social and environmental, that it was very important at this place.
Thank you. Back to you, Magda.
Perhaps a last question for you from Jordi Salina. The canal of the river is going to be removed using landscape techniques. What are those?
Sorry?
About this project, the opportunity is given by the park on the right side. And we can have a low terracement on in case of flood, the river could expand in the park.
Yeah,
and,
it's on the left shore.
On the left shore, yes.
Yeah. The only way we could do this, because there was a park, and here we can't, we destroy buildings, services, but it's a protected shore. We can't do the same things, but we have a big project also here on the opening to the Mediterranean that has to be studied, because here it's too closed. So landscaping here to give more space is to open the space for the river and open here an open space for people.
And opportunities for more biodiversity in town. You can do project because of flood risk mitigation. That's by this way you could act on have an ambitious project for biodiversity. It's important to underline flood risk mitigation to act on develop a big project.
Thank you very much. Thanks again for a very interesting presentation, and for your good work in answering all the questions. And now I would like to move to our second presentation. And I would like to ask Laura Todoran to share her presentation on restoring and management of eco-corridors in mountains as the green infrastructure in the Danube basin. Thank you, Laura.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me now? I think.
Yes, yes.
Environmental Protection Agency, Mureș County, Romania, approach policy development together with Adept Transylvania Foundation. Our goal was to develop a mechanism, a way of managing future ecological corridors, halting the loss of biodiversity in these environments. As a basic tool, we use a methodological guide for identifying ecological corridors developed by Connect Green project. And now you will see and hear my colleague, Cristian Remus-Pop, who is our expert, and he will explain you all technical issues. I think it's
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for this opportunity to present Connect Green as a good example, let's say, of a project dealing with ecological connectivity in Europe. Very briefly, our project has been identified basically as a good practice within the BioGov, as you have already heard. And we were lucky to work with 23 partners, all in all, together with the associated strategic partners across the Carpathians. And this was quite a task, but of course it was not impossible given the whole situation with the COVID pandemics. Very briefly about what we tried to achieve within Connect Green was basically to maintain and improve connectivity between natural habitats, especially between Natura 2000 sites in the Carpathians. And we had 3 specific objectives. First of all, to identify the ecological corridors and the gaps related to them at this scale, to develop capacity in terms of identifying and managing corridors, and of course to come up with some instruments and tools that could help basically the conservation work. Just a few words about the Carpathians. As you might know, we still have quite some natural habitats which are in good shape. They are home for many species, including large carnivores like brown bear, grey wolf, and Eurasian lynx. These were our key species or target species that we used for the identification of the corridors. And well, the nature is still, let's say, untouched in many areas, but there are many threats to these biodiversity values, including to ecological connectivity. And we try to tackle this issue at the whole Carpathian scale. These are the countries that actually contributed to data collection and identification of ecological corridors. And besides these countries, we also had some others participating in order to share experiences and to make sure that the results are integrated into their countries. And just a few examples of the results that we developed. We have the methodology for the identification of ecological corridors. It is the first actually attempt at the whole Carpathian level. We are talking about several countries, which facilitates basically the identification of corridors by using the same principles, which is great. We never had this opportunity before, and even within the same country, there were differences between the methodologies used in different projects for the identification of the corridors. And another concrete example, for instance, is the guidelines on how to use spatial planning in maintaining ecological corridors. So spatial planning was a sector that we involved in the project, and it was key basically to move on with the project. Then, of course, after identifying or agreeing on the methodology, we continued with the identification in the field of the corridors. First of all, we modeled them via GIS, and then we validated in the field all these key connectivity areas. We were also looking at different threats, and here we have an example of cumulative impacts of highway, river, railway, European road, and electric fences, which are actually creating several barriers at the landscape level, which we try to tackle. Here you can see another important result of our project. On the left side, you can see the Carpathian network of ecological corridors for large carnivores. With red, you have the pilot areas we use for data collection. And on the top right, you can see the species occurrences. We had all in all almost 3,000 individual locations, occurrences of the 3 species I mentioned. We developed different tools complementary to the identification of ecological corridors, just to make sure that we are actually securing them on the long term. And one example is the decision support tool, which allows the identification of the different, let's say, conflicts between nature and infrastructure development. We developed an international action plan on the conservation of large carnivores and ecological connectivity in the Carpathians, which was basically adopted by the Carpathian Convention. So this is now a concrete milestone towards achieving long-term conservation of these carnivores. So it's a binding document to the 7 Carpathian countries. We had lots of meetings. We reached out to thousands of individual stakeholders. Of course, after the pandemic, we had to move into online. So we organized quite some online workshops and meetings. We managed to also come up with some training courses in order to address the needs of both conservationists and spatial planners in order to improve the work on ecological connectivity. And the knowledge transfer was another key component. We kind of involved the Carpathian Network of Protected Areas and other professional networks from other areas as well, from Europe. And here you can see some of the conclusions and recommendations of the Connect Green project. Anyway, I think it's really, really important to work in a transdisciplinary manner and to include as many stakeholders as possible from the very beginning to make sure that you can actually achieve the objectives of any project in the end. So thank you very much. This was from my side, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Christy. I want to tell you that Environmental Protection Agency Mureș is responsible for the proper evaluation of plans or projects regarding Natura 2000 sites and ecological corridors outside the protected areas in Mureș County. Well, as a perspective of the results obtained, I can tell you that it is very important to have in the national legislation the ecological corridors, which will be included in the National Strategic Plan. The National Strategic Plan is now being discussed at the level of the Ministries of Environment, Agriculture, Sustainable Development, and even Culture in Romania. However, a number of measures will be regulated at national level, which will then be adapted to each region. This is therefore the potential for transferability to other regions, and I don't know, these measures will be able to be implemented in different regions of Romania and of course from other European countries, depending on the legislation of each country. And thank you. I hope we didn't extend too much. We promise we will be there in 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura and Christian. It's a really, really important topic of eco-corridors, and it's also widely supported by the new strategy, European Strategy for Biodiversity 2030. And maybe one question from me, because this project was largely about international cooperation, and were there any challenges or barriers that you've come across because it was transnational, or was it maybe more enabling? You've also mentioned the legislation and the need of the international legislation. So maybe you can have a look at it also from this perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Magda. Yeah, it was quite challenging. First of all, we had a language barrier. We had another barrier regarding the terms that we were using across the Carpathian region, because, you know, many of us are using ecological corridors Some others are using it in their countries, like migration corridors, wildlife corridors, and so on. And of course, not just the name was different, but also the understanding. What every one of us meant at the beginning was not very properly understood by the other countries, so that it took us quite a lot to harmonize the terms. Then to also agree on the categories of ecological corridors, because we used more, let's say, categories, not just the three main ones which are actually in the literature, but we try to break it down into several other categories, like critical connectivity sectors, critical connectivity areas, and many more, for management reasons, just to make sure that when coming up with different management recommendations, we can apply them in the best possible way. So this took us quite a lot. Legislation was definitely another, let's say, barrier for this harmonization. But in the end, we managed actually with a large consultation of stakeholders and key decision makers to come up with a harmonized, not just methodology, but also approach toward the management of the ecological corridors. So I think that, yeah, all in all, it was a very successful project, although it was quite demanding. And yeah, we are happy that we improved the communication between the different sectors, between nature conservation and spatial planning, nature conservation and transport on the other hand, and so on. And it was the first time in several countries that such sectors basically tried to come up with joint solutions that can actually be implemented on the long term.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would also ask Evelyn to ask any questions.
Sure. I would be really interested to find out if you had any opportunity to address the funding of the management of these ecological corridors. Are they mainly agricultural land or lots of different land uses? What kinds of funding do you foresee?
Funding in which sense?
To maintain the management of these ecological corridors.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we came up with different measures for that, from, let's say, the top national level to influencing different programming documents, including the rural development plan and so on, so that the individual farmers can also include, let's say, in their day-by-day business different practices. It was in a way challenging, but yeah, I think that we were successful to quite some extent. The key programming documents were improved based on our findings, so we made sure that connectivity is in there in every single major funding program, which is great. While on the local level, it's a bit more complicated, because you have to provide, farmers and other local stakeholders with direct benefits. And this involves talking several times to each of them to find some solutions that do not necessarily harm their land use and so on. But we managed to find quite some local stakeholders that are eager actually to contribute, and they understood the importance of connectivity. And some of them even approached us to say that they are ready actually to do something different, and to help also nature to thrive.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Do I have another question, or can I ask another question, Astrid, or should we move on?
Yes, go ahead.
I'd also be really interested to know if you had any possibility to do a kind of climate change impact assessment on your Natura 2000 network, whether you think that species ranges are going to change, whether you're helping species to migrate in reaction to climate change in the Carpathians.
We started, of course, to look at these aspects as well. It's clear that in maybe 30 years time or more, there will be quite some changes in the distribution of the different species. And this will actually also probably modify to some extent the structural connectivity as well. So this is why it is important to prepare for such changes from now. And we are having different collaborations in this respect to make sure that what we are recommending at this stage can be applicable also in the future. Of course, you cannot really foresee how these changes will be in a way seen in the field. But for sure, we need more and more cooperations from this point of view, and to also convince the authorities that when, for instance, planning for a highway, they are actually including the most appropriate mitigation measures in order to allow the movement of species now, but also in the future concerning the shift, let's say, or adaptation of species, including in terms of movement across the landscape. And this is why it's also important, and I highlighted, is that the cumulative impact is really important, and I think that climate change should also be integrated when calculating this impact before coming up with some concrete management measures.
Thank you. It's great.
Thank you.
Look forward to reading your guidance.
Thanks.
Thank you. And a last question, and please just a brief answer from Silvia Lomonaco. We have a question. Carpathian and Alps seem to share very similar challenges. Could it be useful to have exchanges between Interreg Alpine Space and Interreg Danube transnational program? Did you foresee any?
I mean, for sure, we should strengthen the cooperation between the two mountain ranges. We even had one result actually from this point of view, and we wanted to make sure that our results can be applied also in other regions, including in the Alpine region. And we had some exchanges with Alpark, and we have a common understanding that connectivity is important for both mountain ranges. So I'm fully supporting this statement, and I really hope that there will be even more cooperation in the future between the two regions.
And we hope so too. And perhaps you can exchange your contacts and start right away.
Sure.
And thank you again for a very interesting presentation. And there are some questions in the chat that we didn't answer, and we will get back to you after the workshop. And now I would like to come to our last presentation of this session. I would like to ask Balázs Kiss to present a community-supported afforestation scheme. So Balázs, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I hope that you have a good one, and I hope that I share my screen correctly and you can all see it. So first of all, I would like to explain that we are not the good practice owners ourselves, but following the invitation from the policy learning platform, we discussed with the good practice owner that we will be the ones presenting the good practice. So I have put the email address of the good practice owner, and he specifically asked me if everybody wants to join the initiative, I should let him know, because I will explain later that they would like to be building a network of similar initiatives in other countries, and I will come to it why it should be very good. First of all, I would like to say that it's not a very technical presentation from my side. So I'm not an environmental expert, although we are exchanging experience in project progress, but it's not going to be that technical from our side, especially because this is not a really complicated good practice, which is very good. It's not an old initiative. It was started in 2019 and with a very simple objective, to create new forests and to contribute to reforestation. It was started by environmentally concerned individuals. So they are not environmental professionals as well, but they wanted to, let's say, they wanted to do something for the further generations. And the reason they started this initiative is, I believe that it is to provide a forum for all like-minded individuals who want to contribute with their tools and resources to a bigger goal. And so what My Forest does is a specific area is chosen to reforestation. It's mostly donated, not necessarily donated, but a long-term contract is being signed by both parties that this area will become a forest. And then, of course, land use change has to be reported to relevant authorities. And because it's a quite well-known initiative, it got quite good media coverage when it started. And of course it's search engine optimized, so it's very easy to find. If you are looking to plant a tree or contribute to an initiative, it's almost the first to come up, so it's easy to find. The place and time of where the trees will be planted are advertised on the web page of the initiative, and they basically accept these donations on the website. It's very easy to do. I will come back to that later. And why it is good to be a part of this initiative, because you have a sense of charity if you are participating. The threshold for donating for a new forest is very low. It's 1.6 euro for one sapling, so it's very cheap to enter and donate. And also you have a sense of fulfillment. You can use a logo in your communications, especially if you are a company, because there are basically all kinds of organizations and people can donate. So there are no limits in this regard. And sorry if I'm going forward a bit, because it might make more sense in this regard. So what is being done is the donations are accepted on the website. Meanwhile, there are different areas within Hungary which are advertised as areas that will be reforested in the near future. So you can choose a closer one to where you live, and you can also apply as a volunteer to help with the forest plantation, actually, because most of the work is being done not just based on the donations, but also some machinery or equipment is also donated for this purpose, and the workforce is also mainly consists of volunteers. Of course, fencing the area, which is quite required for the saplings to be protected, is being paid. Of course, the saplings have to be paid, and a long-term, I think also the local forestry companies are also involved in this process, so they know that they might have to help in maintaining the forest on the long run. But basically, it is all to keep the costs as low as possible. And it's not just the cost.
Balázs, if you could conclude. Yes, thank you very much.
Yes. I think the biggest advantage of the project is that all target groups can join ordinary citizens as simple donors or volunteers, even students or whole classes can be invited to the planting and the donating. Businesses can purchase and they can tie to sales. So you can buy a meal as a takeaway and at the same time support the community with a sapling. And of course, the landowners are contributing as well. I think it's very good because it's quite efficient and easy to understand. It's very transparent because you can see who has donated how much trees. It's well communicated and it's organized well. So it's a bottom-up approach, which is managed in a top-down way, if that makes sense in this regard. And it focuses on several target groups and ones. And you can learn more in our Progress Project Handbook. And also, if you are looking to join an initiative, because they are, the My Forest initiative is really looking for new members in other countries as well. Please consider writing an email to the Gmail address here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the very nice call. We all need to contribute to the European target of planting 3 billion trees by 2030, right? So this is a great way how to do just that. Could you perhaps share any results of the project up to date? For example, how many trees have been planted so far?
The total area that is already forested, I believe, is around 4 hectares, which translates to about 40,000 saplings, if I'm correct. But actually, the amount which is already funded is much more than that. It's around 14 hectares, which then should be around 140,000 saplings. So considering that one sapling is 1.6 euro, of course, especially, actually, I could show the website if you don't mind, because it's quite interesting to see that so they display the names of the donors there, and it's very refreshing to see. This is one, and it is very refreshing to see that there are lots of small-scale donors. So, like citizens donating for the price of a cup of coffee. So basically, and it can be seen that it's 5 hectares and 50,000 saplings. And it's only a plant, so they don't even have the location. I can see that on their Facebook that they are working on fixing the location, but it's constantly changing because it's a community initiative. It's I think that flexibility is very important here.
Question, please.
Yes, please. I would be very interested to know how you are planning and screening these plantings, because we all know the benefits of afforestation, but there are areas where it's actually not good for biodiversity to plant trees, and also it depends on what species you plant and how you plant them. So I'd really like to know how you're planning this and where you bring in, if you bring in biodiversity experts to screen this process.
Well, I will try to answer this question to the best of my knowledge, because I'm not actually participating in this initiative, but based on what we have discussed with the organizer, the local forestry companies are involved in this process. So that includes the selection of species that will be planted, but mostly native species, of course, that are suitable for the location that they are planting in. So I believe that what and where they plant is already discussed with the forestry companies. They can be seen as the main local stakeholders that can be knowledgeable about where and how to do that. I'm not sure if there are specific biodiversity experts involved in this process, although.
We also have some questions in the chat. So if you can just answer briefly, as we are running out of time a little bit. Who is managing the forest and who is the owner? And what are the benefits for the companies?
So in the first years, it's actually the initiative managing the forest. So as you could see there is a fencing for the first few years. And also volunteers are involved and they actually had some kind of activities already organized on their Facebook page that were directed not just towards planting a new forest, but also maintaining the already existing one. I am not sure about the ownership. I mean, I think it's what we have discussed, that it's different from forest to forest. So I think that there are even donations of the ownership of the land goes to the initiative. And there are other cases where there is a long-term contract which is signed by both parties about, and I think at first it was for 25 years. But I think it should be at least like 100, in my opinion. And on the long term, the forestry companies will manage the forests. So it's better to keep these professionals, of course.
Yes. And perhaps the last question, are those, and it comes a little bit to what Evelyn was asking before, are those plantations monoculture, or how do you plan for biodiversity in terms of structure and species of the forest?
Well, I would say I'm not sure if there are long-term biodiversity plans within this project. And from what I've seen, these are not fully monoculture. So yes, it's a whole forest of similar species variations. So it's I think it's mostly oak and what is so local saplings are both.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Balázs, for the presentation, and I will give word back to Astrid. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for these nice presentations and the interesting questions. As Magda has said, what we haven't managed to answer now, we will try to answer later a little bit. And with Balázs, we will also see if we can get more specific information from the colleague that you have mentioned already. Yeah. So thank you very much. So you remember maybe our little technical problem from the beginning with Vujadin. So what we've decided to do is we will now take a little break. You can use this break to network. There are different rooms. On the other hand, you can also just try to have a mini break, get a fresh coffee or something like that. And we will see you back at 15:35 when we will start with the presentation of Vujadin Kovacevic from the European Commission. Then we can go into the panel number 2, which is focusing on pollinators. So maybe this is sitting nicely together anyway. So thank you very much for your attention so far. Thank you for the great discussion. Thanks, Evelyn, Magda. Let's have a little break and see you back at 15:35 sharp, please. So hello, everyone. I hope to have had a small break, and we would now start with our presentation from Vujadin Kovacevic. So Vujadin, I see you're there.
Hi, Astrid, can you hear me now?
Yes, very well. And I'm really happy to see you as well. So let's just start right away with your presentation. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Astrid. And apologies for the technical issues. I just lost the connection at the worst possible moment. So can you please just confirm that you see the full screen?
Yes, we see everything is fine.
Perfect. Okay, let's start. Good afternoon, everybody. It's really my pleasure to be here with you today in the Policy Learning Week and the workshop and the seminar on the biodiversity ecosystem services and especially pollinators. And I'm happy to present what what the EU, what the Commission is currently doing in this regard. Just a quick reminder for those who are not familiar with the policy. The EU Pollinator Initiative is the first ever EU action on pollinators. We adopted the initiative in 2018. It's a soft policy. It's not a legislation. It's a communication from the Commission to the European Parliament, Council, Committee of the Regions, European Social and Economic Committee. It's basically a strategy which tries to better integrate pollinator conservation needs across different sectoral policies. And I will mention which ones are the key. There are more than 30 actions across 3 pillars. It's quite classic. We try to improve knowledge base, tackle the causes of decline, and of course, engage society at large, especially citizens and businesses. The initiative has a long-term perspective until 2030. From the beginning, from the start, when we started developing in 2017, it was quite evident that there is a high public affinity in regard to pollinator conservation, and that was reflected in our public consultation, which garnered more than 60,000 replies, which is quite high for the Commission consultations. And most of the respondents stated that they consider that the decline of pollinators in Europe is alarming and that we need urgent action. In regards to tackling the causes, the initiative directly addresses land use and land use change. This is both important for urban and rural areas, agriculture, pesticide, invasive alien species. Indirectly, it also touches on other environmental pollutants and the climate change. I mentioned integration into sectoral policies. So while the initiative itself is not a legislation, there is a number of legislations where we integrate pollinator conservation needs. Of course, the most important Habitats Directive, but also then sectoral policies like Common Agricultural Policy, of course, Cohesion Policy, pesticide legislation, and invasive alien species regulation. More specific strategic actions on the ground are guided through species action plans. We do not have action plans for all species, but we strategically address umbrella species, those species, if their conservation status is secured, this will mean also that we secured good conservation status of a number of other species. We are currently developing these plans, and we hope that in the next year and a half, we're going to have 3 full multi-species plans developed. We try to improve knowledge along the way. We do not need to wait for perfect knowledge to act on pollinators. We know enough that we know that we have a serious problem at our hands. However, we need more actionable knowledge. It's knowledge that really allow us to act at different spatial and temporal resolution. This is the reason why we try to first improve the knowledge on species itself. We want to know better what's happening with populations of pollinators, and we are building from scratch an EU pollinator monitoring scheme together with member states and experts. Currently, the monitoring scheme is in a pilot and testing phase, and we hope that in the coming years, together with the member states, we will ensure that we have this scheme fully deployed on the ground. We also monitor pressures on pollinators. This is a critical piece of puzzle. So we are looking at habitats for pollinators, pesticides, and other pollutants in the environment. And through other, of course, mechanisms, we are also looking what's happening with invasive alien species and, of course, climate change. What we need to complete the full picture, so besides species pressures, is also the response of the society. So we really need good information, what is happening at different levels by different actors in order to understand the level of the effort and, of course, the impacts. And this is something that the Commission is already doing, but we definitely need also help from the actors and especially regional and local authorities. We try to engage businesses, citizens, other actors through a number of activities. We developed a comprehensive set of guidelines for different business sectors, including for cities, urban areas, but also rural areas. We organized a lot of networking events, special conferences, for example, one with the Committee of the Regions, where regional local authorities could also give their views and, of course, tell us what they're doing and what more should be done for pollinator conservation. We developed a lot of educational material, virtual reality tools for younger generations, also projects with youth promotion activities, and all of these materials, events, you can find on the EU Pollinator Information Hub, which is a central place for all the information on the activity across the EU. The main aim of that hive is that different actors see what is already happening, and of course, to be inspired and to join, of course, other stakeholders, actors in pollinator conservation actions. Currently, the policy state of play, we reviewed the initiative last year, and the conclusion was that the initiative, it's a good framework to address the problem. However, there are challenges, especially in addressing the causes of pollinator decline. We received quite a strong interinstitutional feedback from the Court of Auditors, from the Council, Parliament, also from the Committee of the Regions, and they are all basically calling for stronger actions for pollinators to reverse the decline. We need to improve the governance, we need stronger governance, engage more actors, more stakeholders, and we definitely need a very good metrics monitoring system to set measurable objectives and targets, to understand what we did in terms of the actions, and of course to measure also what were the impacts of those. We are currently revising the initiative with a deadline of Q3, probably September this year. And to this aim, we are conducting a very wide expert consultation through workshops, but also we plan to launch very soon, this week, a open public consultation. And just to mention, at the end of this state of play is that while the pollinator initiative is a soft policy, there could be a legal aspect to it added soon. In the proposal for a nature restoration law, which the Commission is currently finalizing, Commission is considering to add a legally binding target to reverse the pollinator decline by 2030. Of course, we need to see what's going to be in the final proposal, but if that is inside, of course, it's going to also change the character of the strategy. Finally, why should the regional and local authorities get involved and how they can get involved? Well, it's quite clear that pollinators can be a proxy, a very good proxy of sustainable territorial development. They really reflect well not only the environmental dimension, because of their function in ecosystems, they can really indicate very well what is the health of the ecosystems, but also social and economic dimensions. And it's not only through pollination and not only through crop pollination services that this is done, but also through other services. We can think of pest control, but also more importantly, would be maybe to mention that pollinators, through the support of the vegetation, whether it's crops or wild plants, they support all the services which are being developed through the flora. There is also a very high societal demand for policymakers to stop the pollinator decline, to take up much stronger actions. I just provided here a few examples. Referendum in Bavaria, which was apparently the most successful referendum in the history of Bavaria, with more than 20% of electorate coming to the petition, to respond to the petition, Save the Bees. And later on, the demands of the petition were incorporated in the regional law. And now the same petition, Save the Bees and Farmers, is being replicated at the EU level. And the petition collected currently more than 1 million signatures. Of course, we need regional local authorities to better translate what we do or imagine at the EU level to the local level on the ground. Of course, we need national authorities, but it's the regional and local authorities that are much closer to citizens, much closer to actors, and of course, can help us to have much greater impact. Citizen engagement will be a crucial part there. We are not talking about citizen science. We are talking about also citizens getting involved in conservation actions. And one particular aspect which is important for regional local authorities is special planning policy in order to have a strategic response to a problem in a society, especially one which has a special dimension like biodiversity and pollinator conservation. We need to integrate needs into the special planning policies. This is not competence of the EU, it is a national competence, and also in member states this competence can vary between national, regional, and local level. We need strategic planning of space, both in urban and rural areas. How you can get engaged currently, please follow already projects that are ongoing. There are also many projects under Interreg program. Also the guidance documents that we produced for authorities. And of course, you can also contribute to the consultation. We have a dedicated expert workshop for actions for pollinators at regional and local level, which is taking place on 28th of April, and registrations are ongoing until 7th of April. So please share the link here through your network. And of course, we welcome also your contribution to the open public consultation. With that, I would like to thank you and just remind you once more to visit the Pollinator Information Hive for additional information. And I'm happy to answer any questions and, of course, participate in the discussion with other discussants in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vujadin. That was a very nice presentation and a lot of possibilities also to contribute in different groups. We have no questions in the chat, just a quick round to our speakers that are in the panel that are actually focusing on pollinators. Do you have any questions for Vujadin? Maybe Saorla or Evelyn, you have a question? I don't know, we are open.
Can I ask what you think are the main challenges to rolling out this pollinator monitoring? Where do you see the main barriers and possible ways in which the local and regional authorities can help the process to get started?
It's the capacity, and capacity in different ways. One is definitely funding. So monitoring pollinators will not be cheap. Current estimates say that we would need around 50 million euros per year to monitor pollinators really well in all 27 member states, and monitor in such a way that we can detect a meaningful change in the population that can allow us to, of course, adapt our policies as we go. There is administrative capacity, so we need people in public authorities who can organize the scheme. Public authorities do not need to deploy it on the ground. They can, of course, outsource expertise in academia, in NGOs, but somebody needs to organize everything, provide a financial framework, organize, of course, any kind of supporting facilities, material, tools, and so on. And of course, there is the last challenge, I would say, and that's the expert capacity. We are actually not having only decline of pollinating species, but also decline of experts that can identify pollinator species, taxonomists, and we are also currently mapping that expertise across the EU. And of course, we have also activities on the ground to train more experts and to involve more citizen scientists. So this would be the three main challenges currently.
Great, thank you very much. So a lot of challenges we're having. I don't know, I see Federica, do you have a question, or maybe Saorla or Albert before we go to the panel?
No, just a comment, very interesting presentation. I believe that pollinators are a very important issue to conserve and preserve for biodiversity purpose. And I thank Vujadin for the effort done in these years with all these initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much for pointing this out. Yeah, I think there is a lot of interest and a lot of efforts being also made by the Commission. And I see if you say 66,000 people have actually participated, that is a lot. I don't know, this is quite a massive figure. So in the consultation, so very good, a lot of interest from everybody. So Thanks for the moment, Vujadin. I think we can go to the presentation of Federica. I don't know if you're ready for this. Our colleagues.
Yes, I'm ready, and because my presentation will be presented by you, I will speak on the presentation that will help me to show to the public.
Exactly. So I ask my colleagues to launch a presentation.
Thank you.
And here it comes. And we will see something very interesting from the coast of Molise on the installation of bed boxes. I really look forward to this. Thank you very much. The word is yours.
Thank you for having given me this opportunity of sharing the results we obtained on Molise coast working on bats and especially acting with a conservation action as it is the one of bat boxes installation. I apologize, I am on the field, so I hope you can hear me well. But I'm here to share with you our results that have been very, very interesting, very important. And if we can go on with the other slide, I can explain you that these results are of a life project that we did in. It started in 2011, and ended in 2017, and it was a life project that was based on an integrated approach to preserve coastal habitats and target species. And bats were indicators of were target species and indicators of good success of conservation action done in the habitat restoration on the coast of Molise. We did in the meanwhile of this project, doing this project, we decided even to do a direct conservation action for bats, installing 400 bat boxes in the whole Molise coast. It is not a very big coast. There are 40 kilometers of coast, but we have lots of different habitats in the coast, and so we decided to put the bat boxes in different conditions, in more urban areas, in pine wood that were planted by humans, in natural pine wood, and in woods that were forests that were natural forests, in order to see if there were differences in colonization done and linked to the different habitats in which they were placed. So if we can go on with the other slide, please. And our results showed that 71% of colonization was in the urban area. And it is not a surprise, because it happens that bats use bat boxes in place in which there are no natural roosts. If they can't find natural roosts, obviously they prefer to use natural roosts. Otherwise, in areas in which you can have a certain degree of degradation of the habitat, they prefer to use even bat boxes if they are installed. And so it was a very good result to give in a very urban area of the coast. We can say that in the Molise coast there is not a very high urbanization, but fortunately in the little places in which the urbanization is quite high, with our conservation action we succeeded in giving the opportunity of the bat species that are present in the coast to use this bat boxes for their roosting activity. And the majority of the bat boxes that were in the urban areas were colonized by Pipistrellus cooley, that is a very common species of bat, and that is even a bat that uses bat boxes often. We can go on with the other slide, in which I present the results that we obtained in natural areas. Natural areas, we obtained colonization too, and we have more species and even genus that colonize these black boxes. Pipistrellus, all the different species of Pipistrellus present in the coast. So we have Pipistrellus pipistrellus, Ipsogosami, and Pipistrellus puli, but even the genus Nyctalus, that generally this tree-dwelling species don't use so much bed boxes, but they can do in some conditions. And even in Molise coast, we obtained a good result because many of the bed boxes were colonized by Nyctalus genus. And it is a very important result because this genus is a genus in which species are migratory, and so they have to be particularly conserved. There are particularly protocol for the conservation of these migratory birds. And we can go on with the other slide, in which I resume the results, please. Does it work? Okay, so the conclusions say that we found that in the early stage, the birds colonize urban areas, but afterwards, even in the natural areas, we had to wait 3 years for having the first colonization in the urban area, in the natural areas. But we obtained this result, and this is important to highlight even the fact that monitoring is very important when we do conservation actions, because if you place bed boxes and you do not monitor on the long term, you cannot know if there is actually colonization. So the important thing is to continue in monitoring when you do conservation actions. And we observed colonization even during the winter, but we cannot speak of hibernacula because the winter were very, very, very warm. And so I think that colonization was always related to a normal colonization, not to a winter roosting, because there was not hibernacula during those years that were particularly warm. And this is due to climate change, obviously. And it is important to use these results to manage in future projects the use of bed boxes, and most of all in the coastal area, because other results important by our work in this project was that coastal areas are very, very, very used by birds. And for this reason, let's see Interreg Europe that took this good best practice that we developed, was involved in creating an ecotourism approach that use these important flag species and target species in order to enhance sustainability in the territories and sustainability in ecotourism. So I think that we think that it is important to collect best practices, to share best practices, and to develop joint communication and information and scientific panels in order to share our knowledge due to conservation and research projects. And I think that I have finished my presentation. I thank you all for your kind attention. I don't know if you have any question. I'm here to answer to you.
Well, thank you very much, Federica. That was a very nice presentation, and you have very interesting results as well. So I would first turn to Vujadin and ask him if you have any questions to Federica.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Federica, for the very interesting presentation. And it's really nice to see that you are on the ground, on terrain, and doing stuff. I was quite pleasantly surprised by the high rate of colonization. I think you mentioned more than 70%. Is that something standard for bats? Because if I compare it to some other species, group of species, it's quite high, and definitely it seems more important because you said that first it's the artificial sites which are being colonized, and then they move to natural ones. So that means that in the conservation, it's really critical to get that right well. And I have two specific questions. One is, when you were placing the boxes, did you consider specific pressures that the bats face in the area? For example, light pollution or habitat fragmentation or anything else? And the second question is, how do you see, how could we ensure long-term monitoring of the results in those areas? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, bat boxes, yes, I installed the bat boxes and I decided where to put the bat boxes after 1 year monitoring with bat detector. So I already had an idea of the distribution of the different species in the area. And at the beginning, the bat boxes had to be placed only in one part of the coast. But after my first monitoring with bat detector, I decided with the monitor of the project that it was better to use all the coasts in order to give the opportunity of the 11 species I found in this coast to have the opportunity of having places to be colonized in different habitats. So in different conditions, we don't have problems of pollution due to the lights in Molise, because it is a very wild area in Italy, fortunately. And so only in the Termoli you could have a little bit, but it's a very small town, and so there are no this kind of problems for bats. The rate of 70% is very high. Yes, it's definitely high, but I think that it's high because I didn't put the bat boxes and then monitor them without having any idea of the bats present in the area. I started my job and my work first monitoring the species that were present, and then I decided where to place the bat boxes. So I think that the good result in colonization is done even by chance, because animals don't read papers and don't read our reports. So sometimes it's even due to chance, maybe, but even a strong work of monitoring and a little bit of expertise in what bats need for their life cycle. I think that both chance and expertise gave us the opportunity of obtaining this colonization rate. And the last question, sorry, was about, I forgot.
It was about monitoring, long-term monitoring. How would you see how to secure this?
We are still monitoring these bat boxes. I go there once or twice, once in the winter and once in summer per year, to have information in the afterlife plan program. And because we think that it is very important to have information and not to lose information. And indeed, I hope this year to publish the research, because after all these years, all this information, I think that we could succeed in having a good publication to be shared even at a scientific level. It is important to share in EU projects, but it is even important to share in scientific level. I like to work in both direction: active conservation actions, active sharing in EU projects, but even in scientific production.
Well, thank you very much, Federica. I think that was a very nice and comprehensive answer, and it's excellent that you're planning to share. if I understand well, also the new European Bauhaus is planning to have more wildlife-friendly buildings in urban areas, and maybe this is one of the possibilities. Use the bed boxes, as you have seen, there's a lot of colonization going on very fast, if I understand well. We had one question is like, how long does it take before the boxes are colonized? But I think you have answered that. In urban areas is already after 1 month, and in the natural habitats you had to wait up to 3 years. Yeah, then we had another question also with regard to light pollution. You have answered that as well. You don't have light pollution, so that is something that is, or not too much at least, so that is maybe for other areas. We have a question and a statement and a question related to that. We have bed boxes around Freiburg in Germany too, and bats colonize them permanently. Now sometimes they fly into people's houses. Do you teach the population about your initiatives? And if yes, do you also teach them how to handle bats that might have flown into the houses and barns, for example?
Absolutely. Yes, we did it. We did a lot of information and education programs, and even bat night events to have people to see the bat. We started our bat nights at the sunset in order that they could even see the bat spy of the bat boxes and hear their ultrasounds. And it was a very good experience to share with population, because when you do conservation actions, you have to share it even with the people who live in the places, because it is important to inform them. And about the fact that animals could enter into the house, it's very easy to explain to people. They are getting used, and they are understanding that bats are not dangerous, and so they can simply turn off the light, open the window, and exit the room in which there is the bat. And after a few minutes, the bat is outside, because if the bat is nervous, so it is not able of going out from the room. But if it's calm, if nobody is there making it to be to feel harmful, it goes away in a few minutes, even if he hadn't a good orienteering for entering a room. Because when they enter a room, it's because they something gets worse, gets wrong in their echolocalization system, because otherwise they don't enter in the room.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much for your answers. We have another question, which is how do you promote these results to local public authorities? And what arguments do you use to convince them partnering with you on these colonization campaigns?
Oh, I worked very strictly with public authorities, because in the Interreg Lenti, we worked with the Molise region. Molise region was a partner of Interreg Lenti. And I worked with Molise region through the University of Molise to support the exportation of this best practice to the local community. We also wrote the ecotourism action plan for the Molise region in order to make the region the more renowned in the world and in Italy. To have a very good tourism, in order to have even an economic sustainability in a sustainable way for tourism and for the target species important that we have in the Molise coast. And so the public bodies are involved completely in the conservation actions in Molise.
Well, thank you very much, Federica, for your explanations and for all the work. I think we should come with Interreg and have a nice workshop on bats and a bat night. That would be really interesting.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your presentation. At the moment, we don't have other questions, but if they're coming, then we will answer them later in writing. So with this, we would like to thank you to you, and would like to go to Saorla Kavanagh from Ireland. She's working with the National Biodiversity Data Center, and they have done a very interesting program called Protecting Farmland Pollinators. And also here, I think a lot of inspiration can be gathered on how to work on that. So, Saorla, the word is yours.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Astrid. My name is Saorla Kavanagh, and I'm managing the Protecting Farmland Pollinators EIP, which is coordinated by the National Biodiversity Data Centre in Ireland, and it's an initiative of the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. It's a European Innovation Partnership Project, or an EIP, and received just under 1.2 million in funding. It's being run over a period of 5 years, and we have 40 farmers involved in the project. We have a range of different farm types and a range of farm intensities, as well as a range of farm sizes and also household incomes. So where a farmer is solely reliant on the farm for his household income compared to those that aren't. So it's this range of farms involved in the project that strengthens the applicability of this project to be used nationally and also in other EU member states. So there's just over 2,500 hectares of farmland involved in the project, mostly in the Kildare region in Ireland, but also some bordering counties. And it's a results-based payment scheme. This means that farmers receive an annual monetary reward based on how pollinator friendly their farm is. So in year one, collectively, the 40 farmers received just over €63,000. And in year two of the results-based payment scheme, this figure increased to just over 84,500. And again, the nature of this results-based payment system and how it works also is very transferable to other EU countries. In 2020, we conducted extensive farm surveys, and these surveys are helping to build the evidence-based so that we can test the actions that we're advising farmers take to identify which are the best ones. We have developed a whole farm pollinator scorecard, and this scorecard is based upon providing food and safety and shelter for pollinators on the farm. And it's not just about the quantity of these habitats, but also the quality. Yeah. So this,
Federica, please mute yourself.
The scorecard stems from the Farmland actions to help pollinators, which were published by the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. And these actions were generated in consultation with farmers, and they're also evidence-based. So combining the evidence-based of those actions with the surveys that we conducted in 2020 really strengthens the results that are coming out of this project. So I'm just going to highlight 3 key progresses to date. Increased pollinator points would be number 1. So farmers received pollinator points depending on how pollinator friendly their farm was. They were then given information on how to improve those points if they wanted to. So 25 farmers decided to take action to help pollinators. 8 farmers reduced pesticide inputs, and 4 hectares of native meadow were created. Over 34,000 meters of flowering hedgerow and hedgerow margins were created and maintained. And you can just see here that it didn't matter what type of farm you had, the pollinator points increased across all farm types. It's not just about the monetary reward for some of the farmers, there's also a thirst for knowledge within the farming community. And farmer engagement is the second progress I'd like to highlight. We had a number of farmer training sessions throughout the year, and there's been an average of 20 farmers attending each session. And these sessions are optional, you don't have to attend. We also have a WhatsApp group that facilitates peer-to-peer mentoring. And there's also communication lines are always open between the project team and the farmer. And I think that's an invaluable resource for the project, that communication. And lastly, the data set I'd like to highlight. We have pinned and identified 2,051 pollinators 34 bees have been identified and 45 hoverfly species across the 40 farms. We also have data on plants, hedgerows, and solitary bee nest sites. So I'd like to thank you all for your attention, and I'm very open to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Very impressive results that you have been presenting, and also in your work with the farmers. I'm not a specialist in that, but if I see there is no more hedges, everywhere is a big farmland, so there is none of these pollinator points. And if I understand it well, there is also not a lot of money going into this. Is a relatively small amount. Is that correct?
This project. So it was just under 1.2 million for being run for 5 years. There's a very low administrative burden to generate this scorecard. I am the project manager, and I had for 6 months, I had 3 surveyors working with me.
Very good, very good. I mean, I think the results are really impressive. So maybe we can turn to Vujadin for your questions, please.
Thank you, Saorla, for the presentation. I'm really happy to see this project included in today's workshop, because it's building on the previous work of Bird and Life project and of the Commission's result-based payment scheme projects. We had a lot of pilots in Spain, Romania, in England, while UK was still in the EU, and of course in Ireland. And we see a lot of these result-based schemes really popping up in Ireland, and we are happy to see one on pollinators as well. I mean, it's from our experience, this is really a win-win-win situation that we are talking here, because from my experience with these kind of schemes, farmers like it, stakeholders, NGOs like it, nature conservation sector likes it, and public authorities like it as well. The reason for that is that for farmers, first, they meaningfully engage into conservation actions. They start, if they didn't know biodiversity before, they start to understand it, and they know why they're doing things. And also it's a lot of flexibility there. It's, you do not tell them how to do stuff, you give them a goal and they need to achieve the goal, and they really like this. Public authorities like it because they know how much effort, money has gone into the scheme and what results came out. This is crucial to estimate any kind of cost benefits, and of course to drive conservation actions across different areas, across landscapes and countryside. And of course, nature conservation and stakeholders, citizens, they like it because they see impacts on the ground. With that in mind, I mean, Saorla, I have 2 questions. The first question is, did you already engage in communication? Because we know from previous projects that farmers really started to take pride in certain species being on their parcel, certain type of butterfly like marsh fritillary and so on. And they started to really promote this. It was basically the equivalent of farmers discussing in a pub who has a bigger tractor. And this is where actually we want to go. So I'm just wondering, do you have already some experience from the ground in terms of communication with citizens, with farmers? Are they promoting already by themselves what they're doing? And second question is a bit more technical. We saw in previous result-based payment schemes that what is critical to deliver a success on the ground are the farm advisors. So we need people who understand both farmers, land managers, and nature conservation. They need to build chemistry with the farmers. And I would just like to know, do you see enough capacity there? Do you think we need to build more capacity in farm advisory system? Or it's currently, at least in your region, in Ireland, you find it satisfactory? Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent points and excellent questions. I'll go with the first one initially. So yes, there's competition within the farmers to get the highest pollinator points or to be the most improved farm. We produce a monthly newsletter and it's sent to the farmers, and we also have other people on the mailing list as well. So there's an update from the project team on that. So the farmers are very interested in engaging to see who gets mentioned in this month's newsletter. Now again, it's not every farmer is competitive in nature, but there is definitely a level of competitiveness within some of them. And then, yes, in terms of communication and citizen science, as I'm working in the National Biodiversity Data Centre, there is a network there of citizen scientists already. So we're using various social media outlets to communicate the project further afield as well. And just in terms of the farm advisors, that is a critical point I think you hit. And yes, we do need to build the capacity there. Currently, I suppose I don't know from further afield, but within Ireland, our farm advisors, they will receive a certain level of training on biodiversity, depending on what is the current agricultural scheme that's in play. But it's really a tick boxing exercise. There isn't a thirst for knowledge in relation to biodiversity for farm advisors. They just need to tick a certain number of boxes, is what I'm finding. Now, again, there's always the exception to the rule, and you can meet a farm advisor that is interested in biodiversity. So I hope I answered both questions.
Thank you very much. We have several questions for you. So the first one is coming from Evelyn. Are you planning to develop recommendations on how this can be done as part of one of the eco schemes in Ireland?
So yes, and I have as well. So I've had various meetings with the Department of Agriculture here in Ireland. There's new results-based payments pilot scheme that is going to start this year, and I suppose I was involved in some meetings during the start of that. There's various results-based payment schemes operating in Ireland at the moment, and a lot of them fed into this new pilot scheme that's coming out. I suppose they haven't decided that they're going to adopt this scheme and run it on a national scale, unfortunately. They're creating a hybrid, something that will involve more farm advisors.
Thank you very much. So also progress on that side. We have a question from Brenda. Was there feedback from the farmers about their profitability, excluding any grants?
So the maximum cap that any farmer can receive in 1 year is €4,000. So it's not perceived as quite a lot, depending on the type of farmer you are. I suppose, the smaller, lower inputs and lower output farmers would perceive it as a great bonus, but it would all depend. So, and again, I suppose some farmers, they're not really interested in the monetary reward. It's more the information that they're getting from the project that's the real the payout for them.
Thank you very much. And we have a question from Clemen. Citizen engagement actions for wild pollinators in urban areas, for example, using traditional mowing material for replanting in the city agri-landscapes, work actions of sowing hay debris with local seeds. Any support to cities for this engagement, awareness raising actions, and for collecting and using local seeds based for faster restoration of the local urban meadows for pollinators, urban rewilding. So I know you're working with farmers, but maybe the All Ireland Pollinator Plan has parts in that?
Yeah, so the All Ireland Pollinator Plan, like it's I suppose it's now receiving some funding, but when it started, it had no funding at all, so there was no money for that. I don't know specific funding resources for making urban areas more pollinator friendly, but we do have the Green Flag Award for our parks, for example, and there's actions you can take to help pollinators in parkland. So there's a number of county councils, so there are local authorities in Ireland, we call them county councils. So for Waterford or for Dublin, there's various county councils, and they promote pollinators because they have joined the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. And then there's also actions for gardens. So if you want to take action to help pollinators and you're a homeowner and you have a small back garden, you can log those actions online. That's pollinators.ie. But again, there's the Pollinator Plan does not provide funding to do that. It's limited in its funding that it has. It has to apply for funding to various resources. So again, the Department of Agriculture is one of the places where the Pollinator Plan can get funding.
Thank you very much. I think we've had a nice link from Evelyn earlier on in the links in the chat. You can see it's called Blühendes Bodenseeland. I think there is some funding from Interreg for that, and I also know about a program in Germany in Braunschweig. There is also a university where they have been putting together a special mix of flowers, etc., from the area, which is being available to the citizens, and they can use it for this urban rewilding, for their gardens, for public infrastructure, and so on. So maybe I can try to find this for you, Clayman, and send you some input on it.
We also have the Heritage Council here in Ireland, and they can provide funding for the Tidy Towns groups. So there's a lot of small communities throughout Ireland, and they form these Tidy Towns organizations, and they can apply for funding to the Heritage Council so that they could plant apple trees, for example, in their community.
That would be great. If you have a link for that, that would be excellent, because you have the other advantage of speaking English, so everybody can follow these kind of things. So that would be excellent if you could share that with us as well. Thank you very much for your presentation and for the interesting approach. So with this, I would like to say, last but not least, I would like to go to the Netherlands, and please unshare your presentation so we can give Albert the possibility to share his. And okay, Saorla, you have to unshare your screen first, please. Perfect, now it's working. So Albert, we are going to you. We're very grateful that you're here. And you're going to speak to us about the Bespoke project with my favorite image of the day. So the word is yours, Albert. Please go ahead.
Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
Oh. Not yet?
Oh.
We tested it and then it was okay. Sorry.
Magda, can you have a look if you can find the presentation maybe? Oh, now it's working, now it's coming, yes.
Sorry, I'm maybe not totally, yes, my screen is sharing. Well, thank you for the opportunity to tell something about Delta Lady and one of the best practices, Bespoke. First of all, we live in the Rhine Delta area. And well, as you maybe know, we live below sea level, and we Frisians are a little bit, well, framed rear folk, because we want, at first hand, we will give the sea back to our land a little bit back to the sea.
Hello, Albert. Sorry to interrupt, but we have difficulties hearing you. I think your headset may be.
I am. Can you hear?
I think it is better if you unplug your headset.
Okay. Well, let's hope the Air Force is not flying this afternoon, because I'm living next to the Air Force of the Netherlands, and but they are already left. But we live below sea level, and at first hand we give a little land back to the sea, and the second hand we hire our dikes. And that are very big investments, of course. In our Delta Lady, we made an action plan. There were 2 actions we wanted to do. And one of, well, you can read them. I don't have to tell it. And I want to tell something about Bespoke. And I like this picture. When did we start with Bespoke? In 2018, we were Cultural City in 2018, and we made a project called Bee Rhapsody, and it was an Interreg A project together with Germany, and well, the Bee Rhapsody was a project where we brought beehives in near children from primary schools, and they count the bumblebees. And it was a very successful project. And after this project, we have decided to go on with the bees and with the bespoke project. Oh. Well, bespoke, it's one of our practices in Delta Lady. It brings 16 countries, project partners from several countries together. And well, you can see here some details. And it is funded by the North Sea region, Interact North Sea region. And the mission is to increase the level of pollinators and crop pollination at local and landscape scales, and it will lead to more sustainable and resilient ecosystems and more biodiversity in agriculture. One of our things we saw in Bee Rhapsody, that on land near the farmers, there was no food for the bees. And in the inner cities, there were more food for the bees. And that's very strange, of course. And we learned that we had to make some, well, borders, what is good for the bees. You see here a border we made in our province. And well, it's good for the biodiversity, good for the farmers, good for their productions. And when the farmers have a good production, it's also good for us, as you can imagine. But we had an other action, what is very important in our action plan, and it was utilize a tool in the assessment of nature projects. And we are, well, it is a project of the University of Groningen. They made an assessment from how can we, well, what is value for money and in nature, and how do they contribute to the SDGs, Social Development Goals. Well, this is a theoretical thing. I cannot explain it because I got the presentation, this page from the University of Groningen. But there are 17 sustainable goals, as you all know, I think. And we got a pilot approved last year. And aim is to see in a simple way how a project scores in the SDGs. The first version is already delivered, it's not ready yet. And one of our projects, of course, Bespoke has gone through the web-based app as a test. And you can see here the results, and you can see what are the sustainable development goals and how do they rank into the project and where do the project contribute to the sustainable development goals. And that was a short story, what I wanted to tell you. And I hope you liked it.
Thank you very much, Albert, for presenting your approach in the Netherlands, and not alone there, but also in your other partner countries. Again, I'm going to ask Vujadin, do you have any questions to Albert?
Yes, thank you, Albert, for the presentation. I have two questions. One is directed to the seed mixes. This is definitely one of the fundamental gaps in tools for pollinator conservation. And it's not only for farming, it's also for urban areas, because we try to engage citizens, telling them, please do something for pollinators. And they ask us, okay, what kind of plant should I be planting in my garden, for example? Or in case of farmers, as your project, farmers ask us, okay, what exactly should I be planting there? So my question is a bit more about the species, the mixes of the seeds and the species that you are developing. I think I saw that there is also one of the partners is a company, I guess, developing seeds. So do you plant native species, and even more, do you develop mixes with local species? Because one thing is to be native in Europe, but what we would really like to see is local species which are adapted, of course, to local climate, and they're adapted to local pollinator species. So that is one question. Maybe connected to that, a sub question. because we think there's going to be kind of a capacity issue in developing these mixes at large scale if you really want to scale up the conservation actions with pollinators. So maybe some reflections on, because you had a partner who is developing seed mixes, how we can move with that capacity forward. Do you see enough capacity there, or we would need to invest more and maybe develop some partnership with the private sector in that regard? So one question is on local native species, and the other is on the development of the capacity to produce those seed mixes at a large scale. And then connection to action 2.
Can I also can I already answer this?
Sure. Yes.
I have a little headache because I was tested Saturday on COVID. So don't do too much at the same time. But we have a local company here in Friesland. It's called the Kruidhoek. And they make local, species for the farmers, for the people, for everyone who wants to have it. And they produce the seeds. Is that one of the answers you asked me?
Yes, but maybe is it just one company which is in the region, or there are more companies that you could partner with?
Well, there are more companies, but only one company is as a partner in the project, and that's the Kruidhoek, as I have mentioned it, and I don't think they have problems with using the seeds. But it's funny because when you look to our area, it's a green desert, you can say. And especially our dikes, they are also with grass. And we had a test piece in the dike, and then we added some seeds on it, and there the dike become stronger. And why? Because the wattles,
the roots.
The roots, yeah, thank you. The roots grow and grow more and more, and that's why the dike became stronger, and that's nice to see. And now they are looking, can we use it everywhere, or is it just a small part of the dike what will be stronger?
Mm-hmm. Good. And then the second question, you mentioned cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah.
And also as a support to decision making, I guess at the local but also regional level. This is really interesting. My question is, do you consider only the ecosystem services or the benefits that can be monetized, that we can express in economic terms, or also you take into account services and benefits that cannot be monetized, but that there are there, and of course that would be important to consider?
Well, I think it's a broader sense of the thing, but it's a very technical thing. The University of Groningen has put a PhD on it, and at this moment we are very busy with looking how does the projects contribute to the social development goals, and what can we learn from that, because sometimes people think, well, my project is very good in social development goal 1, and then you're going into the test and then it doesn't score at all at that social development goal. And that's also one of the tools we want to use in future in giving money to projects.
Thank you, and thank you for being with us here today despite COVID.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Albert, and maybe also in your case, if there's more questions, we can also ask them in writing later, so that you can answer them at ease in terms of, for example, if you think there's enough capacity and how we should do it.
I'm not the project manager of Bespoke, and when there are very detailed questions, we can always ask it to them.
That's an excellent idea, and I would like to see with the other speakers. Do you still have a question, maybe also to Albert, or have you received all the information so far? I don't know. Well, I don't see any more questions at the moment, which brings me to our closing session. A big thank you to the speakers and for the explanations we had so far. I would like to give the word to Evelyn now to make her concluding remarks and responses, especially, of course, to panel 1, but also to panel 2, if you think you would like to add to that. Please go ahead, Evelyn. You are still muted.
Okay, sorry. Yes, thank you. I found the panel 1 really inspiring, and I did have responses prepared, so I was saving them up till the end. But I think that the 3 projects have shown some really important lessons and good practices that these projects can bring to other areas and upscale. I think there's some really good examples there of the importance of good governance approaches and systems. And by that, I mean a multidisciplinary approach. So this lessons of how... Sorry. Okay. There were also really good examples of how an initiative that started bottom up.
Sorry, can you please mute yourself, Andres Bridis? Oh, Eugenie, can you please do that? Thank you.
Good examples of initiatives that have started bottom up, but that now are developing a strategic approach that will ensure their long-term success, and the other way around, and how both can work, and both citizen engagement and a strategic approach at the regional and national government level is key to long-term success. The challenges of legal issues, and here we're talking about land rights, talking about spatial planning approaches. These are things that that have to be dealt with by each project, and they differ from area to area. So there's a lot of expertise needed there. And I think what also joins up all the projects is the importance of considering the spatial planning dimension, and also a strategic planning dimension in the long term that provides a vision for the region. And thirdly, the importance of individuals in the capacities of mediators, in the capacity of facilitators, and in the capacity of convening organizations. So to point out some of the policy windows and opportunities that Astrid introduced at the beginning, we have the EU Green Deal and the EU Biodiversity Strategy. We now have a biodiversity spending target in the EU budget that will mandate at least 7.5% of the EU budget going to biodiversity by 2024. And by 2026, this will be 10%. And we see a need for the regional development fund to really deliver here, because in the past, this has been very dominated by the CAP, and perhaps by CAP spending that wasn't actually delivering for biodiversity. And of course, Interreg is absolutely key here. We see, and this applies to, and this creates a need for projects to demonstrate their impact on biodiversity. So projects that may be funded under another objective line for climate adaptation, or to do with water quality, the biodiversity objective is also there and counted. The nature restoration law proposal, we hope that that will be published in a few weeks, and that will propose legally binding targets for restoration. Cities and urban areas will be invited to submit urban greening plans by the end of the year. And this will create a need for targets to expand urban areas, for quality criteria for green spaces, and for approaches to tree planting in urban areas. And finally, we have the EU policy process for meeting the targets on the protected area network. And here we had that very inspiring project in the Carpathians. All member states will need to look at the connectivity of their protected area network and how they can really pin down conservation objectives and measures for their protected areas. And there is the possibility of including areas that are not currently designated, known as other effective conservation measures, or OECMs. And these are areas that are under contractual arrangements for biodiversity. So this is a way in which these stepping stone areas can be created, these corridors, and these local nature areas that are so needed both in the rural and the urban space. So to finish, thank you all for these inspiring projects, and I will be following them up in more detail.
Thank you very much, Evelyn, for bringing this so nicely together and for making also these important points on what is needed in the future. I would also like to turn to Vujadin for his conclusions on the session 2 and the other sessions as well.
Thank you, Astrid. Once again, just to thank all the presenters, all the panelists in session 2. I think it was really invaluable contribution. Just to set a bit the scene, we are currently revising the EU Pollinators Initiative, and we have been in very close talks with the European Committee of the Regions, discussing how regions and local authorities can better contribute to the development and implementation of the policy. We should not forget that implementation is where the challenges lie. It's easy to write actions on the paper, but we need to implement them. And the Committee of the Regions positively replied in their recent opinion on the revision, where they said that they would like to pilot Pollinators network, where they would bring together regional and local authorities and share the best practice expertise, but also help us to map what regions and local authorities are doing. So we very much look forward to that. This is really a new step in the collaboration. In that regard, the 3 presentations today definitely can provide a critical contribution, because they are helping to develop the tools and the capacity for the regional local authorities to engage. I was really pleasantly surprised by Federica's presentation and the results even more, which showcase how important it is to invest in our experts. Without experts, we will basically operate in dark. We will know exactly where we should actually do actions and how we can be cost effective. We know that increasingly budgets are under constraints and we have to do more with less. That means that we need to be well targeted. So I was really happy to see that high rate of colonization of the beds, which means that a lot of has been actually invested in preparations. So I think this is really one of the key takeaway messages. Prepare well, equipped with good knowledge, and then we can have cost-effective measures on the ground. Similarly, Sarah's presentation, I think result-based payment schemes and approach in general is one of the key tools in the toolbox. There is place for management-based measures, but what we actually want to see, what is the exact impact of the action on the ground? And seeing that this tool is further developed and more specifically in context of pollinators is very encouraging. I think the takeaway message from my view there is that, again, we need to invest in our experts, and these are farm advisors. I think Saorla confirmed my fears that we might be lacking capacity there. If we do not have knowledgeable people on the ground who can guide the actions, we're not going to come a long way. And then Albert in the final presentation I think another contribution to the toolkit, seed mixes. This is really one of the fundamental gaps we have. If we cannot tell people what kind of species are preferable to be planted, whether in the gardens or in the farmland, it is a bit hard to expect large-scale impacts there. What I found also interesting there is the cost-benefit analysis. A couple of years ago, the Commission published guidelines on integration of ecosystems and ecosystem services into decision making, and this is very, very pertinent to local and regional levels, authorities. We want participatory governance. We want all actors to come around, and I think cost-benefit analysis can be one of the tools or the basis there, around which the actors can come together and start the discussions. It's not the end of the discussion, it's just the start to see what we have in a countryside, in a landscape, in a territory. It's critical to assess, but also then see the cost benefits, who are the winners, who are the losers. This is critical to understand really well, discuss, and this is going to lead to good political decisions. So of course, we would need a bit more details on that work, on the cost-benefit analysis, but I find it quite refreshing that it's the part of the project. So all taken together, I find those contributions quite exciting, and I would really like to encourage everybody, all the participants today, to try to already explore them, use them if they haven't. And of course, I'm looking also forward, Astrid, to the Interreg platform to help us to replicate a bit more of these kind of events, because I find them extremely valuable. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words. And just a little reminder, we will publish a policy brief very soon, and a lot of the information and the ideas that we have heard here today will come into counting. So we need to make sure that all the stakeholders are being involved, from the authorities to the citizens. We need more experts that can actually help with understanding the species, monitoring the species, and so on. I thought it was also very interesting that it's not only, of course, the agricultural policy that has to deal with that, but we're all concerned also in urban spaces. So the European Regional Development Fund is a very interesting partner for that, and also the Interreg programs, as we have seen, are already starting to work on it very surely. Prepare well, have the good knowledge, and then you can get the good results and implement. I think that is also another key takeaway. And there is a lot of information already available. We will also share with you when we share the recordings and also the different presentations, the links to these ecosystem services guides that have been published some time ago. They're extremely interesting, and they have a lot of good knowledge. So with this, I would like to conclude our day today. I hope that you have enjoyed our first day of environment and resource efficiency at our Policy Learning Week. The recordings of the day will be available to everyone. So we have talked today about ecosystems and biodiversity, but we also had this morning already a very interesting session with a study tour to Hamburg and the use of sustainable material for construction, so wood construction in the Hanseatic city. We also had an Ask an Expert session, which is very interesting, bringing you answers for green public procurement, natural and cultural heritage. And of course, you can watch all of this as well. And we will share with you in the near future the recordings and our key learnings from this event here that we had. I would like to repeat what the two discussants have said. Thank you very much for your contributions, for sharing these interesting examples. Thank you very much to Vujadin and to Evelyn for helping to steer the discussion and to bring a good summary at the end. I would also like to thank the colleagues for all the work, especially Magda and Eugenie and Soroush, which have been working very hard. And a little a little feedback on the day tomorrow, because we are of course continuing our policy learning week tomorrow. Our colleagues from SME competitiveness are working on the same kind of sessions. So we have an Ask an Expert session, and we have a study visit to Biel in Switzerland, where you can discover a Swiss smart factory. So, and it ends with a workshop on S3 implementation. So I guess that is actually the research and innovation colleagues that are doing that work. So thank you very much. Please, for everybody that has booked the help desk, don't run away, stay with us so we can have these slots that are booked also filled with a reminder, with a good talk. And please also give us your feedback in the survey that you will see after the session is closing. So a great thank you to everyone. Have a nice day. Get healthy if you have caught COVID. Stay healthy if you don't have it yet. I wish all of you all the best and good programs for preserving and restoring our biodiversity and ecosystems. It's great to see so much and so many motivated people working on that issue. So thank you very much, and hope to see you in one of our events very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.